The night shift at the quick stop on Highway 99 was the loneliest job in California's Central Valley. Eli Reeves had been working it for 3 years, 11 at night to 7 in the morning, 6 days a week, for $9.50 an hour. It wasn't enough to live on, barely enough to survive, but it was all he had. At 26 years old, with no degree, no skills, and no family left to speak of, Eli had learned to be grateful for what he could get. The station was 20 miles outside Fresno, stuck in that dead zone between towns where the only customers were truckers, insomniacs, and people who'd taken a wrong turn. Most nights, Eli saw maybe a dozen cars. He'd stock shelves, mop floors, watch the security monitors, and count down the hours until sunrise. It was monotonous and mind-numbing, but it was safe, predictable. After the chaos of his early 20s, the foster homes, the bad decisions, the 6 months in county for a theft charge he'd been too young and stupid to avoid predictable, was exactly what Eli needed. Tonight was like every other night. Hot, even after dark. The valley held on to heat like a grudge and quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a pale, sickly glow. The radio behind the counter played classic rock at low volume, more for company than entertainment. Eli was restocking the cigarette display when he heard it, a motorcycle engine. Distant at first, then closer, then pulling into the lot with a rumble that vibrated through the floor. He looked up at the security monitor and saw the bike roll to a stop at pump 3. It was a Harley old, from the look of it, but well maintained. Black and chrome, with saddlebags strapped to the back and a bedroll tied above them. The rider dismounted slowly, stiffly, like someone who'd been on the road for a long time. Eli watched him approach the pump, then stop, stand there, not reaching for the nozzle, not coming inside, just standing, helmet still on, looking at the pump like it owed him money. Something was wrong. Eli grabbed his keys and walked outside. The night air hit him like a wall, thick, warm, smelling like diesel and dust. He approached the rider, carefully, not wanting to startle him. "Hey, everything okay?" The rider turned. He was big, over 6 feet, broad shoulders, the kind of frame that suggested a lifetime of physical work. His leather jacket was dusty and torn at one shoulder, and beneath it, Eli could see a vest, a cut, patches on the front and back that he couldn't quite make out in the dim light. The rider pulled off his helmet. He was older, late 50s maybe, with a weathered face, grey stubble, and eyes that looked like they'd seen the worst of everything and kept going anyway. "Pump won't take my card," the man said. His voice was low and rough, like gravel being dragged over concrete. "It does that sometimes. You can prepay inside if you want." The man was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Don't have cash. I can run your card at the register. Sometimes it works better." Another pause. Longer this time. Cards maxed. Eli understood then. The man wasn't just having technical difficulties. He was broke. Stranded on a dark highway in the middle of the night, with an empty tank and no way to fill it. He looked at the bike, at the saddlebags and bedroll. This wasn't someone on a joyride. This was someone traveling, running from something or towards something, moving through the world with everything he owned strapped to 2 wheels. "How far are you going?" Eli asked. "Oakland." That was at least 150 miles. More than a full tank's worth for a bike that size. "You got someone there? Someone who can wire you money?" The man's jaw tightened. "I got people. But it's complicated." Eli nodded. He didn't push. He knew what complicated meant. It meant pride, or burned bridges, or situations too messy to explain to a stranger at a gas station. He should have left it alone. Should have said sorry, and gone back inside and let the man figure out his own problems. That's what most people would do. That's what the smart move was. But Eli had been broke before, had been stranded before, had stood in parking lots and on street corners, wondering how he was going to get to the next place, the next meal, the next day. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, someone had helped him. A stranger with no reason to care had reached out a hand and made the difference between making it and not. He thought about those moments now. The woman who'd bought him a bus ticket in Bakersfield. The man who'd given him a job washing dishes when no one else would hire someone with a record. Small kindnesses from people who didn't know him, who would never see him again, who helped anyway. Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He had $43, all the cash he had until payday, 3 days away. He took out 2 20s and held them out to the rider. "Fill it up," he said. The man looked at the money, then at Eli. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, surprise maybe, or wariness. "I can't take that." "Yeah, you can. You need to get to Oakland. This'll get you there. I don't have any way to pay you back. I'm not asking you to." The man stared at him for a long moment. Eli could see him wrestling with it, the pride, the discomfort of taking charity from a stranger, the practical reality that he didn't have another option. Finally, he reached out and took the money. "What's your name?" he asked. "Eli." The man nodded slowly. "Eli." He said it like he was committing it to memory, and then he extended his hand. "Ghost." They shook. Ghost's grip was strong, calloused, the hand of someone who'd worked with it his whole life. "Thank you, Eli. I won't forget this. Don't worry about it. Just get where you're going." Ghost put the money in the pump and filled his tank. While it ran, he stood there in silence, looking out at the dark highway, at the nothing that stretched in every direction. Eli didn't try to make conversation. Some people needed quiet. When the tank was full, Ghost hung up the nozzle and put his helmet back on. He swung onto the bike, moving a little easier now, like the fuel had lifted a weight off him and started the engine. He looked at Eli one more time, raised his hand in something that was more than a wave, but less than a salute. An acknowledgement, a promise. Then he pulled onto Highway 99 and disappeared into the darkness, the red taillight shrinking until it was just another star in the black. Eli stood there for a moment, watching the empty road. Then he went back inside, back to the fluorescent lights and the buzzing radio and the long hours until morning. $40. That was grocery money. That was 3 days of eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, hoping his car didn't break down, hoping nothing else went wrong until payday. But it was also a man who'd get to Oakland, a stranger who'd make it home or wherever he was trying to be. And that was worth something. Maybe it was worth everything. Eli went back to restocking the cigarettes and tried not to think about how long the week was going to be. The next few days were hard. Eli made it through on instant noodles and the free coffee he was allowed to drink during his shift. His stomach growled constantly, and by day 3 he had a headache that wouldn't quit, probably dehydration or low blood sugar or both. But he'd survived worse. He'd get to payday, and then he'd buy real food, and everything would be fine. He didn't think much about the biker. The encounter had already faded into the blur of other late-night interactions, the truckers who talked his ear off, the teenagers who tried to buy beer with fake IDs, the lost travelers who needed directions. Ghost was just another face in a long line of faces, someone he'd helped and would never see again. That's how it usually worked. You did a kindness, and it disappeared into the world, and you never knew if it mattered. But sometimes, really, unexpectedly, it came back. It was exactly 1 week later when they showed up. Eli was behind the counter, watching the security monitors with half-closed eyes, counting down the hours until his shift ended. It was just after midnight, the deadest part of the night, when even the truckers stopped coming. He was thinking about sleep, about the breakfast he was going to make when he got home, about nothing at all. Then he heard it. At first, it was just a rumble, distant, like thunder, but too steady, too constant. It grew louder and louder and louder until the windows were vibrating and the coffee in his cup was rippling, and the sound filled every corner of the station like a living thing. Eli looked at the monitors. His blood went cold. Motorcycles, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, pouring off the highway and into the parking lot like a black river, filling every available space, their headlights creating a wall of light that turned night into day. They were everywhere, lined up at the pumps, parked along the edges, sitting in formation across the lot. And they were all wearing the same thing: black leather vests, patches on the front and back, the uniform of men who belonged to something larger than themselves. Hell's Angels. Eli's hands were shaking. He'd heard stories about the club. Everyone had. The reputation, the rumors, the things people said in whispers. They were outlaws, criminals, dangerous men you didn't cross and didn't question. And now they were at his gas station. Hundreds of them. He should run. Should go out the back, get in his car and drive until he was somewhere else. That's what his survival instincts were screaming at him to do. But his legs wouldn't move. He just stood there, frozen, watching the monitors as the riders dismounted and began walking toward the store. The front door opened, and Ghost walked in. He looked different than he had a week ago. Cleaned up, rested, wearing a cut that was in better shape than his jacket had been. But it was definitely him, the same weathered face, the same grey stubble, the same eyes that saw everything. Behind him came other men. Big men, hard men. Men who looked like they'd been forged in fire and come out stronger. They filed into the small store and filled it, standing along the walls, in the aisles, everywhere. Eli couldn't breathe. Ghost walked up to the counter. He looked at Eli for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into his cut and pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the counter between them. "Eli," he said, "we need to talk." Eli stared at the envelope like it might explode. "What is this?" His voice came out as a croak. "Open it and find out." Eli didn't move. He looked at Ghost, then at the men filling his store, then back at Ghost. "I don't want any trouble. Whatever this is, I didn't do anything wrong." The Ghost's expression softened, just slightly, just for a moment, but Eli saw it. "You're not in trouble," Ghost said. "Just open the envelope." Eli reached out with trembling hands and picked it up. It was heavier than he expected, something solid inside, not just paper. He broke the seal and looked inside. There were 2 items. The first was a $1 bill, worn and creased. Second was a patch. Black background, white lettering, red border. It read, "Honor Among Outlaws." Eli looked up, confused. "I don't understand." "That dollar is yours," Ghost said. "The same 220s you gave me, minus what I spent on gas. I keep my debts. You didn't owe me anything." "Yes, I did. And this," Ghost tapped the patch. "This is something else. This is what you earned." Eli shook his head. "I didn't earn anything. I gave a guy $40 for gas." That's everything." Ghost's voice cut through Eli's protest, sharp and final. "You don't understand what you did. So let me explain." He turned and gestured to the men behind him. They parted, and another man stepped forward. He was older than Ghost, mid-60s maybe, with a white beard and eyes like chips of ice. His cut had more patches than anyone else's, and the way the others deferred to him made it clear he was in charge. "This is Priest," Ghost said, "president of the Fresno chapter. He wanted to meet you." Priest approached the counter. He didn't smile, didn't offer his hand, just looked at Eli with an intensity that made him want to shrink away. "Ghost told me what you did," Priest said. His voice was deep and measured, each word placed with precision. "He told me you took $40 out of your own pocket, money you couldn't afford to lose, and gave it to a stranger on the side of the road. A stranger who was wearing a Hell's Angels cut." Eli swallowed hard. "I didn't know he was. I saw the vest, but you didn't care," Priest finished. "That's the point. You saw a man who needed help, and you helped him. Didn't matter who he was, what he was wearing, what you'd heard about people who look like us. You helped anyway." He leaned on the counter, bringing his face closer to Eli's. "Do you know how rare that is? How many people would have called the cops instead? Would have locked the doors and pretended they didn't see? You could have done any of that. You could have walked away, but you didn't." He straightened up. "That means something to us." Eli didn't know what to say. He looked at the patch in his hands, at the words stitched into it. "Honor among outlaws." "I'm not an outlaw," he said quietly. "No, you're not. But you acted with honor, and that makes you one of us, whether you ride or not." Priest gestured at the men around him. "Everyone here knows what Ghost told them. Everyone here respects what you did. And everyone here wanted you to know that you have friends now. The kind of friends who show up when you need them." He tapped the envelope. "Keep the dollar. Frame it if you want. It's a reminder that debts get paid in this family. And keep the patch. It's not official, you're not a member. You don't have to be. But it means something. It means you're under our protection. Anyone gives you trouble, anyone threatens you, anyone so much as looks at you wrong, you tell them you're a friend of the Hell's Angels. And if that doesn't work," he pulled a card out of his cut and laid it on the counter, "you call that number. We'll handle it." Eli picked up the card. Plain white, no name, just a phone number. "Why?" he asked. "Why do all this for me? I just gave a guy gas money." "Because loyalty matters," Priest said, "and because the world is full of people who'd sell you out for less than $40. You're not one of them. That's worth protecting." He turned and headed for the door. The other men began to file out after him, the store slowly emptying. Ghost stayed. "You okay?" he asked. Eli laughed, a shaky, disbelieving sound. "I don't know. I don't know what this is. It's gratitude. We don't forget people who help us, ever." Ghost paused. "I was in a bad place that night, worse than you know. I'd been riding for 3 days, trying to get home, trying to get back to people I wasn't sure wanted to see me. I was broke, I was exhausted, and I was about ready to give up. And then you came out of that store and handed me $40, like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was all I had, I know. That's why it mattered." Ghost's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. "You gave me more than gas, Eli. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world, that not everyone's out to screw you over. I needed that. More than the fuel, I needed that." Eli looked at the patch again, at the dollar bill, creased and worn, at the card with the phone number. "I don't know what to do with any of this," he admitted. "You don't have to do anything, just know that you've got people now. People who'll have your back if you need it." Ghost extended his hand. "And if you ever want to learn to ride, if you ever want to know more about who we are and what we do, you give me a call. That's my number on the card too." Eli shook his hand. The same grip as before, strong, calloused, sure. "Thank you," Eli said. "I still don't feel like I did anything special, but Thank you. You didn't feel like it was special. That's exactly what made it special. Ghost smiled. A real smile, the first one Eli had seen. Take care of yourself, Eli, and keep being the kind of person who helps strangers on the side of the road. The world needs more people like that. He walked out of the store. Eli followed him to the door and watched as the Hells Angels mounted their bikes, started their engines, and rolled out of the parking lot in formation. The sound was deafening, hundreds of engines roaring in unison, a wall of thunder that shook the ground. They pulled onto Highway 99 and disappeared into the night, just like Ghost had a week before. Taillight after taillight, fading into the darkness until the road was empty and the silence rushed back in. Eli stood in the doorway for a long time, holding the patch and the dollar and the card. His hands weren't shaking anymore. He didn't know what any of this meant. Didn't know if it would change his life or fade into memory like everything else. But he knew one thing. He wasn't alone anymore. For the first time in as long as he could remember, he had people who'd show up for him. And that was worth more than $40. That was worth everything. The next few months were quiet. Eli went back to his routine. Night shifts at the quick stop, instant noodles on bad days, actual food on payday. Nothing changed, not really. He still made $9.50 an hour. He still lived in a studio apartment that was too hot in summer and too cold in winter. He still counted every dollar and hoped nothing broke. But something was different. He could feel it. The patch sat on his dresser at home, next to the framed dollar bill. He looked at them every morning when he woke up and every night before he went to sleep. Honor among outlaws. A reminder that he'd done something that mattered, even if it hadn't felt like much at the time. He thought about calling the number on the card sometimes, not because he needed help, but just to, talk. Ask questions. He didn't even know what he'd say, so he didn't call, and the weeks went by. The trouble started in October. The quick stop had always been safe-facilitated, yes, but not a target. The register never had more than a couple $100 in it, and the security cameras were visible enough to discourage anyone looking for easy money. But times were hard, and desperate people did desperate things. The first robbery happened on a Tuesday night. Two guys in ski masks, one with a knife, demanding everything in the register. Eli gave it to them, $180, and chained. They ran. He called the cops, filed a report, and went back to work the next night like nothing happened. The second robbery was a week later. Same two guys, same masks, same knife. This time they took $220 and the cigarettes. Eli gave them everything they wanted, didn't argue, didn't resist. That's what you were supposed to do. But it was getting harder to come back. Harder to stand behind that counter, knowing they might show up again. Harder to sleep during the day, when every sound made him jump. He thought about quitting, but he couldn't afford to quit. He needed this job. The third time, they didn't just want money. It was past 2 in the morning when they came in. Same masks, same knife. But there was something different about them this time. Angrier, more aggressive. Register. Now. The one with the knife was right in Eli's face, the blade inches from his throat. Eli opened the register. His hands were steady. He'd learned to keep them steady, but inside, he was terrified. That's it? That's all you got? The guy was looking at the bills like they'd personally insulted him. Bullshit. You're holding out, I'm not. That's everything. We deposit the rest every few hours. Then open the safe. I don't have access to the safe. Only the manager does. The guy grabbed Eli by the shirt and pulled him halfway across the counter. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know you're lying. I'm not lying. I swear to God, I don't have access. The knife came up, pressed against Eli's throat. He could feel the cold of the blade, the pressure of it against his skin. Last chance, the guy said. Open the safe or I open you. Eli couldn't breathe. This was it. This was how it ended, bleeding out on the floor of a gas station in the middle of nowhere, killed for money he didn't even have. Then he heard it. Engines, distant, then closer. The rumble of motorcycles, not just one, but men getting louder by the second. The two robbers heard it too. They looked at each other, then at the door. What the hell is that? The headlights appeared in the parking lot. One bike, then another, then more, a dozen of them, maybe more, surrounding the station, blocking the exits. The guy with the knife let go of Eli and stepped back. His partner was already moving toward the door. Let's go. We gotta go. But it was too late. The door opened and Ghost walked in. He wasn't alone. Behind him were other riders. Big men in leather cuts, Hell's Angels patches on their backs. They fanned out through the store, blocking the aisles, surrounding the two robbers like wolves, circling prey. Ghost walked right up to the guy with the knife. He didn't rush, didn't raise his voice, didn't even look particularly angry. He just walked, calm and steady, and stopped about 2 feet away. "You want to put that down?" he said. The guy's hand was shaking. The knife was still up, but it was wobbling now. All the bravado draining away. Who are you?" "I'm the guy who's going to decide what happens to you in the next 30 seconds. Ghost glanced at Eli. Saw the red mark on his throat where the knife had pressed. His expression hardened. "You hurt my friend. That's a problem. We weren't gonna. You had a knife to his throat. I saw it through the window." Ghost stepped closer. "So here's how this is going to go. You're going to drop that blade. You're going to put every dollar back in the register. And then you're going to walk out of here and never ever come back to this station. If I hear you've been within 10 miles of this place, I'll find you, and I won't be as friendly. Understand?" The guy dropped the knife. It clattered on the floor, and he kicked it away like it was burning him. "Good. Now the money." The two robbers emptied their pockets, their bags, everything. The cash went back on the counter, along with the cigarettes and everything else they'd taken. Their hands were shaking so badly they kept dropping things. "Now get out. And remember what I said." They ran. Out the door, across the parking lot, into the darkness. They didn't have realized they must have walked, and they were sprinting down the highway like the devil himself was behind them. Maybe he was. Ghost turned to Eli. "You okay?" Eli opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat was too tight. His heart was pounding too hard. He gripped the edge of the counter to keep himself upright. "Hey." Ghost's voice was softer now. "It's over. You're safe. How did you know?" "I didn't. We were riding through, on our way back from a meeting up north. Saw the station. Figured I'd stop in and say hello. Then I saw those two in masks through the window." His jaw tightened. "Good thing we came when we did." Eli's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the stool behind the counter, shaking all over. Ghost came around the counter and put a hand on his shoulder. "Breathe. You're okay. It's over." One of the other riders came in, a younger guy with a shaved head and tattoos up his neck. "Want us to go after them?" Ghost shook his head. "Let them go. They won't be back." He looked at Eli. "But we need to talk about your situation here. This can't happen again. I know. I need this job. I can't quit. I'm not telling you to quit. I'm telling you that things are going to change." Ghost straightened up. "Starting tonight." Things changed. The Hell's Angels started coming to the quick stop regularly. Not every night, but often enough that word got around. The lonely station on Highway 99 was under protection. Anybody who messed with it would have to deal with the club. There were no more robberies, but that wasn't the only change. Ghost came by once a week, sometimes more. He'd buy coffee, lean on the counter, and talk to Eli. Really talk, not just small talk. He'd ask about Eli's life, his past, his plans. He'd share stories from his own years on the road. He'd offer advice, or just listen, depending on what Eli needed. "You ever think about doing something else?" Ghost asked one night. "Something more than this?" Eli shrugged. "I've thought about it, but I don't have a degree, and I've got a record. Nobody wants to hire someone like me." "That's not true. You just haven't found the right people yet. Where am I supposed to find them?" Ghost smiled. "You already did." 2 weeks later, he offered Eli a job. Not as a Hell's Angel. Eli wasn't a rider, wasn't looking to be one. But the club had legitimate businesses, garages, shops, storage facilities, and they needed people they could trust. Ghost vouched for Eli, and that was enough. The job was at a motorcycle repair shop in Fresno, owned by a member named Torres. It was grunt work at first, cleaning, organizing, fetching tools. But Torres was patient. He taught Eli how to work on bikes, how to diagnose problems, how to fix things with his hands. Within a few months, Eli was doing basic repairs on his own. It was hard work, but it was honest. And it paid better than the gas station, a lot better. For the first time in his life, Eli had money left over at the end of the month. He moved into a better apartment, bought a reliable car, started to feel like he was building something. And through it all, the club was there. They weren't his bosses, he wasn't a member, didn't report to anyone. But they were his people, his friends, his family, in a way he'd never had family before. When his car broke down, someone showed up to fix it. When he got sick and missed work, someone brought him food. When he mentioned, offhand, that he'd never learned to ride a motorcycle, 3 different guys offered to teach him. He took them up on it. Learning to ride was harder than Eli expected. He was clumsy at first, dropped the bike twice, stalled out more times than he could count, nearly ran into a fence. But he kept at it. Every weekend, someone from the club would take him out to an empty parking lot and work with him. Ghost was the most patient, but Torres was the best teacher. He had a way of explaining things that made them click. By spring, Eli could ride. Not well, not fast, but competently. He could start the bike, shift gears, brake without losing control. He could take it out on the open road and feel the wind on his face and understand, finally, what Ghost had been talking about. "There's nothing like it," Ghost had told him once. "Being on a bike, on the highway, nothing around you but the road and the sky. All the noise in your head goes quiet. All the weight on your shoulders lifts. It's just you and the machine and the world. Freedom. Real freedom." Eli understood that now. He understood why men would organize their whole lives around it. The ride, the road, the feeling of being in motion through a world that was always trying to pin you down. He wasn't a Hell's Angel. He didn't want to be, not yet, maybe not ever, but he was something, part of something, connected to something larger than himself. And it all started with $40 at a gas station. 1 year after the night he'd helped Ghost, Eli was at the shop when the call came. It was Priest, the chapter president, the one who'd given him the patch. Eli had only seen him a few times since that first night, but Priest remembered him, knew his name, asked about him. "We're having a gathering tonight," Priest said, "at the clubhouse. I want you to come." "What kind of gathering?" "Club business. Not the kind you need to worry about, just some announcements, some recognition. But I want you there. You've earned it." Eli didn't know what that meant, but he said yes. The clubhouse was a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Fresno, big, fortified, full of bikes and men, and the smell of leather and engine oil. Eli had been there a few times before, but always during the day, when it was quiet. Tonight it was packed. There were maybe 100 men there, maybe more. Full patch members, prospects, associates, the whole spectrum of the club's ecosystem. They were drinking, talking, laughing, filling the space with noise and energy. Eli felt out of place. He wasn't a member, wasn't even a prospect. He was just a guy who worked at a shop and was learning to ride. He didn't belong here. But Ghost found him almost immediately. "You came. Good." He handed Eli a beer stick. "Close to me. This won't take long." A few minutes later, Priest called for attention. The room went quiet, not gradually, but instantly, like a switch had been flipped. When the president spoke, people listened. "Brothers," Priest began, "we've got some business to take care of tonight. But first, I want to bring someone up here." He looked at Eli. "Come on." Eli's stomach dropped. He looked at Ghost, who nodded encouragingly. Then he walked through the crowd, feeling every eye on him until he was standing next to Priest at the front of the room. "Most of you know Eli," Priest said. "Some of you don't. So let me tell you who he is." He told the story. The night at the gas station, the $40, the broke stranger on the side of the road. He told it without embellishment, without drama, just the facts. A man who had nothing, giving to someone who had less. "That's what we're about," Priest said. "That's what this club stands for. Loyalty, brotherhood, honor. Eli's not a member. He might never be a member, but he's got those things. He showed them when it mattered, and that means something to me. It should mean something to all of you." He reached into his cart and pulled out a patch. Not the one Eli already had, something different. This one was larger, more elaborate. It showed two hands clasped together, surrounded by flames, with text above and below. "Friend of the club, always welcome, this is for you," Priest said, handing it to Eli. "Put it on your jacket, your bag, wherever you want. It tells anyone who sees it that you're under our protection, that you're one of us, even if you never take the oath. You helped our brother when he needed it most. Now we're returning the favor for life." The room erupted. Men were clapping, cheering, raising their beers in salute. Eli stood there, overwhelmed, not knowing what to say. He looked at Ghost, who was grinning. "Thank you," Eli managed. I don't know what I did to deserve this." "You do know," Priest said. "You just don't think it's a big deal. But it is. It's the biggest deal there is." He put his hand on Eli's shoulder. "Welcome to the family, brother. You've got a place here as long as you want it." The rest of the night was a blur. Ben came up to shake his hand, to slap his back, to introduce themselves and tell him their own stories. He drank more than he should have, laughed more than he had in years, felt more at home than he'd ever felt anywhere. At some point, Ghost found him again. "How you doing?" he asked. Eli looked around the room. At the men who'd become his friends, his family. At the patch in his hands, the symbol of everything that had changed. "I'm good," he said. "I'm really good. Told you. Help someone when they need it, and it comes back around. I didn't do it for this. I didn't do it expecting anything. I know. That's why it matters." Ghost raised his beer. "To the road ahead. Whatever it holds." Eli clinked his bottle against Ghost's. To the road ahead. They drank. And outside, the night stretched on, full of stars and possibilities, and a distant rumble of engines. 5 years later, Eli was 31 years old. He was the assistant manager at Torres's shop, making more money than he'd ever thought possible. He had a house, small one, but his, and a truck that actually ran. He had a motorcycle in the garage, a Sportster he'd rebuilt himself, and he rode it every weekend with guys from the club. He wasn't a Hell's Angel. He'd never prospected, never taken the oath. But he was a friend of the club, and that was enough. He was connected, protected, part of something. Sometimes he thought about that night at the gas station. The stranger who'd pulled in with an empty tank and no money. The $40 that had changed everything. He'd never expected any of it. Never expected that one act of kindness would reshape his entire life. But that's how it worked, wasn't it? You did something good, not for reward, not for recognition, just because it was right, and the world shifted. Doors opened, people appeared. Things happened that you couldn't have predicted or planned. Honor among outlaws. He still had the patch, the original one. It was framed on his wall, next to the dollar bill Ghost had given him. He looked at them every day, a reminder of who he'd been and who he'd become. There was a knock at his door. He opened it to find Ghost standing there, older now, grayer, but still the same steady presence. "Ready to ride?" Ghost asked. "Always." They walked out to their bikes, started the engines, and pulled onto the road. The sun was setting over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The air was warm, the highway was open, and the world was full of possibility. Eli thought about the gas station clerk. He'd been lonely, struggling, invisible. That person felt like a stranger now, like someone from another life, because he was someone else now. Someone with friends, with family, with purpose. Someone who'd been given a chance and made the most of it. All because he'd stopped to help a stranger on the side of the road. Sometimes the smallest acts have the biggest consequences, he thought as they rode into the sunset. Sometimes $40 can change the world, and sometimes, just sometimes, even outlaws could be angels.